I sit in William Peterson's office, surrounded by mahogany paneling that smells faintly of lemon polish. Father's presence lingers here among framed diplomas and the silver-framed family portraits. Peterson keeps on the credenza behind his massive desk. 1 week since we buried Richard Clark beneath a granite headstone that listed his accomplishments but said nothing of the man. 1 week of numbness, of casseroles from neighbors, of Eleanor accepting condolences with practiced grace, while Victoria documented her grief for her followers. Peterson shuffles papers, clears his throat. As you know, Dr. Clark's estate is substantial. The total value approaches $9.5 million, not including personal effects and real estate holdings. My mother straightens in her chair, pearl earrings catching the light. Her black dress is Chanel, her grief accessorized to perfection. Eleanor, as stipulated, you'll receive the primary residence and the investment portfolio established in 1992, Peterson continues, his voice maintaining the neutral tone of someone who has delivered both fortunes and devastation across this desk. Victoria, the lakeside vacation property transfers to you, along with the trust fund established on your 21st birthday. Victoria squeezes my hand, her French manicured nails digging slightly into my skin. A show of solidarity for Peterson's benefit. Her Instagram will feature a touching sister moment later, filtered in tasteful black and white. Isabella, Peterson says, looking up from the papers. His eyes flicker with something hesitation, perhaps. Your father has left you the controlling interest in Clark Medical Technologies and the bulk of his liquid assets. My breath catches. The room tilts slightly. However, Peterson continues, there is a condition. Of course, their island father never gave anything freely, not even at the end. The bequest is contingent upon confirmation of paternity through DNA testing. The words land like slaps. My hands begin to tremble against the leather armrests. My mouth goes desert dry as humiliation washes over me in a hot wave. Surely there's been some misunderstanding, Eleanor says, her voice honey-sweet with concern that doesn't reach her eyes. Victoria's hand returns to mine, a mockery of comfort. Poor Bella, she murmurs. Daddy always did have an unusual sense of humor. Peterson removes his glasses, polishing them methodically with a monogrammed handkerchief. The instructions are quite specific. Miss Clark must provide DNA verification from an accredited laboratory. The results must be cross-checked against family markers already on file. Already on file? My voice sounds strange, distant. Your father provided his own sample before his passing. He was thorough. The memory surfaces unbidden my 10th birthday. Victoria at the grand piano, her fingers dancing across the keys while father beamed with pride. Later, when I showed him my straight-A report card, he barely glanced at it. Books are easy, Isabella. Real accomplishment requires something special. I had tried harder after that. Earned academic scholarships, graduated summa cum laude. Nothing was ever special enough. He planned this humiliation with the same precision he used in the operating room. The question burns inside me. Why? Was a lifetime of subtle rejection not enough? Did he need this final public denial? Part of me, the wounded child still seeking validation, wants to walk away, refuse the test, deny him this posthumous power. But the archivist in me, the woman who spends her days preserving historical truths, needs to know. Evidence doesn't lie. People do. I'd like to speak with Mr. Peterson privately, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. Victoria's laugh tinkles like expensive crystal. Daddy always had his little jokes, Bella. We'll sort this out as a family. The word family sounds hollow in her mouth, a designation I've never fully qualified for. Without the test, Peterson explains, his tone gentler now, the inheritance reverts to a secondary distribution plan. There would be nominal bequests to various medical charities, with the remainder divided between Mrs. Clark and Victoria. Eleanor and Victoria exchange glances, a silent communication perfected over years of Sunday brunches and charity functions. I was too busy, or too unwelcome to attend. They're already mentally spending the money, planning vacations to places where Victoria's followers will admire her curated grief against picturesque backdrops. The legal position is quite clear, Peterson continues. Without verification, you forfeit the inheritance. The stakes crystallize in my mind. This isn't just about money. It's father's final chance to reject me publicly, to confirm what he'd implied throughout my life, that I didn't belong. Without the test, I lose everything, including the chance to understand why he'd orchestrate this final act of cruelty. How long would the testing take? I ask, focusing on practical details to keep the emotions at bay. 2 weeks for results, perhaps less given the priority status I can request. Eleanor brushes invisible lint from her sleeve. William, surely there's a way to expedite matters. The foundation gala is next month, and the family should present a united front. Victoria nods. And I've scheduled the villa renovation to begin in 3 weeks. The contractor requires a substantial deposit. The door opens, and Margaret Wilson appears in the doorway, her sensible blazer and practical bob a stark contrast to my mother and sister's polished perfection. My colleague from the university archives raises an eyebrow at the tableau before her. "I've been waiting outside for an hour," she says, directing her words to me alone. "You look like you need coffee and air." The choice presents itself. Remain in this circle of artificial concern and calculated maneuvers, or step away with the one person who has no stake in the Clark family drama. Margaret doesn't care about vacation villas or foundation galas. She cares about truth just as I do. I stand, smoothing my skirt with hands that have steadied somewhat. "Mr. Peterson, I'll call tomorrow to arrange the testing." Margaret positions herself between me and my family, a human buffer against their practiced manipulations. "Miss Clark needs time to process. I'll drive her home." Victoria opens her mouth to protest, but Eleanor places a restraining hand on her arm. They'll regroup, strategize over lunch at the club where Eleanor has maintained a membership for 30 years. As Margaret leads me toward the door, Peterson calls after me. "Isabella, for what it's worth, your father was complicated. I've known him for decades, and I never fully understood his motivations." I pause, one hand on the doorframe. "I want to know the truth," I tell him, my voice low but firm, "whatever it costs." 3 days after the humiliating scene in Peterson's office, I'm arranging specimens in the climate-controlled storage room of the university archives when my phone vibrates. Margaret peers over a stack of Civil War letters. "Everything okay?" "It's Victoria," I say, checking the message. "They're on their way to my condo." Margaret raises an eyebrow. "Want me to stay late? We could finish cataloging the Palmer collection." No need for both of us to suffer. I slip the phone into my pocket. Besides, I need to face them eventually. When I arrive home, Eleanor's silver Mercedes already occupies the visitor spot. I find them in my living room, Eleanor, perched on the edge of my sofa, like it might contaminate her Chanel suit. Victoria wandering the perimeter, examining my framed botanical prints with manufactured interest. "We let ourselves in," Victoria says, smiling with calculated warmth. "Mrs. Abernathy from next door recognized Mother from the hospital charity auction last spring." Of course she did. Eleanor has cultivated a network of social connections across Boston for 30 years, each one a potential spy or accomplice. I hang my coat without offering to take theirs. "What brings you here?" Eleanor smooths invisible wrinkles from her skirt. "Darling, we've been worried about you. This dreadful situation with the will." "We've spoken with another attorney," Victoria interjects, settling into my reading chair like she's posing for her Instagram followers. "There are ways around this cruel stipulation." I remain standing. Father's attorney seemed quite clear about the conditions. Eleanor's laugh tinkles like frost falling from a tree branch. "William has always been rigid about legal matters. Richard was the same way, constantly insisting on documentation, verification, proof." "What do you mean?" I ask, catching something significant in her tone. She sighs, her fingers tracing the pearls at her throat. "Your father had trust issues throughout our marriage. He questioned loyalties, demanded proof of commitments. This DNA nonsense is just another manifestation of his paranoia." Victoria nods with practiced sympathy. "It wasn't personal, Bella. Daddy did this with everyone." "Everyone?" I repeat. "His business contracts contained similar verification clauses." Eleanor explains, "The medical foundation documents too. He insisted on penalty provisions if board members missed meetings." My archivist's mind begins collecting data points, arranging them in chronological order. How long was he like this? Eleanor's gaze shifts to the window. From the beginning, really. He hired private investigators to follow me. Twice. Eleanor's gaze shifts to the window. "When?" The question emerges sharper than I intended. "Once before we were married, and again after Victoria was born." Victoria fidgets with her watch, a diamond-encrusted Cartier that sparkles aggressively in the afternoon light. Mother always handled it gracefully. Unlike some of his medical colleagues' wives, who would have caused scenes. A picture forms in my mind: Richard Clark, renowned surgeon, methodically documenting perceived slights and suspected betrayals throughout his life. Not just with me, but with everyone. The revelation shifts something fundamental in my understanding. His coldness toward me wasn't unique, it was systematic suspicion applied to everyone in his orbit. The Christmas when I was 12, I say slowly, when Father gave everyone those engraved watches but handed me a book on Greek mythology instead, was that part of this pattern? And Eleanor waves her hand dismissively. Richard had peculiar ideas about appropriate gifts. The watches were for the hospital board. You're reading too much into ancient history. But I'm thinking of the inscription he'd written inside that book. To understand the present, study the past. At the time, I thought it was encouragement for my budding interest in history. Now I wonder if it was a clue. Father's occasional kindness, I say, testing the theory forming in my mind. Was it genuine or just performance? Victoria rolls her eyes. Bella, honestly, must you analyze everything to death? We're trying to help you avoid public humiliation. My attention catches on her word choice. Public? Word travels in Boston, Eleanor says. If you proceed with this test, people will talk. Questions will be raised about our family that are better left unanswered. Memory fragments slot into place arguments overheard between my parents about loyalty and proof that I'd never fully understood. Father's insistence on examining Victoria's school records, while barely glancing at mine despite my higher grades. His detailed journals documenting hospital board meetings, family events, even weather patterns. This test isn't about humiliating me, I say slowly, certainty building with each word. It's about exposing something else entirely. Victoria stands abruptly, moving to the window. This delay is inconvenient for everyone, Isabella. I have commitments. My influencer brand launch next month requires significant investment. The funds from my share of the inheritance are already allocated. There's genuine fear beneath her polished veneer. Victoria's carefully curated life depends on maintaining appearances, and appearances require money. Your country club membership renewal is coming due as well, isn't it, Mother? I ask, remembering the annual drama that accompanied that particular check. Eleanor stiffens. My social standing requires certain obligations. The Duxbury Club has been part of our family tradition for generations. Classed. They're not cartoon villains twirling mustaches, they're genuinely frightened about losing the lifestyle and identity they've built. For them, delayed inheritance means immediate crisis. Perhaps we could come to an arrangement, Victoria suggests, her tone softening. Once the inheritance is settled, we can sort out any misunderstandings. Misunderstandings? I repeat. Victoria's mask slips for just a moment. Mother always said Daddy was paranoid about family loyalty, especially after your birth. Eleanor shoots Victoria a warning glance that speaks volumes. Victoria, please. My phone buzzes a text from Margaret. Found something interesting in the hospital archives. Call me. I need you both to leave, I say with newfound clarity. I have an appointment. Victoria begins to protest, but Eleanor stands, recognizing the steel in my voice. We'll continue this discussion later, Isabella. Remember that family matters should remain private. After they leave, I call Margaret, who answers immediately. Family histories are my specialty. Let me help. I need access to the medical school archives, I tell her. Specifically anything about visiting surgeons from the early 1992s. I need access to the medical school archives. Already ahead of you, she says. Meet me in the archive room in 30 minutes. I hang up and call Peterson's office. His secretary puts me through immediately. Miss Clark, he says, I was about to call you. How can I help? My father's instructions were specific, I say, but I need to know where your loyalty lies in executing his wishes. His pause is brief but significant. My loyalty is to executing his wishes fairly, Miss Clark, whatever that entails. Good, I reply, because I need to approach this systematically. We need primary sources, not family mythology. I gather my coat and keys, my mind already organizing the investigation ahead. My archivist skills, Margaret's research abilities, and Peterson's legal guidance will uncover whatever my father wanted me to find, whatever truth he couldn't or wouldn't reveal while alive. As I lock my door, I realize I'm no longer afraid of what the DNA test might show. For the first time, I'm afraid of what I'll do with the truth once I have it. 30 minutes later, I walk through the university's special collections department, my fingers trailing along polished oak shelves. The Richard Clark Memorial Medical Collection arrived yesterday, 27 boxes of journals, photographs, and memorabilia, documenting my father's distinguished surgical career. A donation that Peterson called stipulated in the will, regardless of DNA test outcomes. My father's final attempt to secure his legacy, carefully orchestrated months before his death. The thought should sting, but after 2 weeks of sleepless nights and carefully catalogued suspicions, I've moved beyond hurt to calculated curiosity. Box 14 needs your attention, Margaret says, appearing beside me with a steaming mug of coffee. Several journals from the 1,980 seconds that don't match the official donation inventory. I take the coffee, inhaling the rich aroma. Personal or professional? Personal. Very personal. Her eyes hold mine. I started preliminary cataloging and found entries that mention your mother, and someone named Laurent. The name triggers something a half-remembered argument between my parents when I was 7 or 8. My father's voice rising uncomfortably in our kitchen. Laurent's fellowship ended 15 years ago, Eleanor. 15 years. The memory crystallizes as I follow Margaret to a climate-controlled processing room where a leather-bound journal sits open beneath archival lighting. My father's precise handwriting fills the pages, the pressure of his fountain pen creating slight indentations visible even from across the table. Page 37. Margaret says quietly, stepping back to give me privacy. I slip on cotton gloves before touching the journal. The entry is dated September 1991, 2 months before my birth. Eleanor's behavior since Laurent's fellowship ended remains concerning, my father wrote. The timing cannot be coincidental. 9 months of unexplained absences, emotional distance, private phone calls, now pregnancy. I've calculated dates repeatedly. The child cannot be mine unless medical science is wrong about human gestation periods. My breath catches. The room suddenly feels too warm, too bright. There's more, Margaret says, sliding a folder toward me. I cross-referenced hospital newsletters from 1990 to 1991. Dr. Antoine Laurent completed a visiting fellowship at Massachusetts General during exactly that period. I flip through photocopied newsletters, stopping at a grainy photograph of a tall man with wavy dark hair standing beside my mother at a hospital fundraiser. Eleanor looks radiant, laughing up at him while touching his arm with casual intimacy. The archives contain 27 photographs from hospital functions during that period. Margaret continues. Your mother appears in 23. Dr. Laurent appears in 19. They're photographed together in 15. My analytical mind takes over, establishing a timeline with forensic precision. Laurent arrived in Boston, January 1990. I was born November 1991. Simple mathematics reveals my conception coincided perfectly with Laurent's fellowship. For the first time since the will reading, power shifts subtly in my direction. My father's paranoia wasn't aimed at humiliating me, it was his final attempt to confirm a suspicion he'd harbored for decades. There's something else, Margaret says hesitantly. Something about Victoria. She hands me another journal. This one from 1987. The entry describes my father's calculations regarding Victoria's birth in November 1987. Laurent's initial 3-month consultation occurred December 1986, February 1987. The timing is suspicious, though inconclusive. Eleanor claims the pregnancy was unexpected but welcome. The realization hits like electricity. My father suspected both Victoria and I were Laurent's children. Victoria needs to see this, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. Within an hour, I've created a careful folder of evidence. Photocopied journal entries, hospital newsletter photographs, a timeline of Laurent's Boston appointments. Research methodology applied to family secrets, my professional skills serving personal revelation. I text Victoria, found important documents relating to the will situation. University archives, 3 p.m. Her response arrives instantly. Can't you email them? Conference call with potential sponsors today. These need to be seen in person, I reply, adding the magic words that will ensure her appearance. They significantly impact inheritance distribution. When Victoria sweeps into the archives at 3:17, she brings the scent of expensive perfume and impatience. Her cream silk blouse and tailored pants look absurdly formal among the academic surroundings. I rescheduled an important call for this, she announces, placing her designer handbag on my desk. This better be worth it. At Island, I gesture toward the chair opposite mine. I've been researching family history. Victoria sighs dramatically. Isabella, we have people for genealogy projects. I can recommend Mother's researcher, who traced us back to the Mayflower for her DAR application. This isn't about distant ancestors. I slide the folder toward her. It's about our father, and a French surgeon named Antoine Laurent. Her perfectly manicured hand hesitates above the folder. Something flickers in her eyes, recognition, perhaps even fear. Who's Antoine Laurent? She asks, but her voice lacks conviction. You tell me, I reply, opening the folder to the photograph of our mother with Laurent. Because father seemed quite concerned about his relationship with mother during the years we were both conceived. Victoria's face loses color as she scans the journal entries. Her social media poise cracks, revealing genuine shock. This is absurd, she says, but her trembling fingers betray her. Father was always paranoid about mother's hospital fundraising work. You know how jealous he could be. Was he paranoid? I place the timeline before her. Or, perceptive? Laurent was in Boston exactly 9 months before my birth, and before that, he consulted at Mass General 9 months before yours. Victoria's gaze snaps to mine. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm taking the DNA test tomorrow, I say calmly. Are you prepared for what it might show about both of us? The power dynamic between us inverts completely. For 31 years, Victoria has been the favored daughter, the undisputed Clark heiress. Now she stares at me with dawning comprehension of what these documents suggest. You're enjoying this, she whispers. No, I answer truthfully. I'm simply bringing truth to light. For once, I'm not the one being manipulated. Victoria gathers her purse with shaking hands and stands. Mother needs to know about this. I'm sure she already does, I reply. After Victoria leaves, Margaret returns with additional photographs from the archives. I found these in a separate donation from the Hospital Historical Society. Society functions your father didn't attend, but your mother and Dr. Laurent did. The photographs show Eleanor and Laurent at gallery openings, charity galas, even a weekend medical retreat in Vermont. In each image, their body language speaks of intimacy and shared secrets. My phone rings. Peterson's name appears on the screen. Isabella? He says without preamble. I've been speaking with your father's former colleagues about the will situation. Several mentioned remembering Dr. Laurent quite vividly. I hold my breath, waiting. One particular comment seemed relevant, Peterson continues. Dr. Harrison mentioned Laurent's strong resemblance to Victoria. Said he'd always thought it remarkable how she had Laurent's eyes and chin rather than your father's features. The final piece clicks into place. My father believed Victoria wasn't his biological child and had evidence beyond mere suspicion. Thank you, I say, mind racing with possibilities. That's extremely helpful. I hang up and stare at the scattered evidence before me. For the first time, I understand my father's coldness toward me wasn't personal rejection, but systematic suspicion directed at both daughters. The revelation brings neither comfort nor closure, only strategic advantage. The question now isn't whether to expose the truth, but how. Do I confront Eleanor immediately with what I've discovered? Or gather more evidence first? I glance at Margaret, who watches me with concerned eyes. What would you do? I ask. Document everything, she answers without hesitation. Then decide from a position of complete knowledge. I nod, archival instincts overriding emotional impulses. The truth has waited decades. It can wait a little longer until I have incontrovertible evidence. Tomorrow's DNA test will provide the final proof. Then I'll decide exactly how to use it. The next day, I step into the sterile reception area of Boston Genetic Partners, the scent of antiseptic and lemon-scented cleaner, replacing the faint smell of leather that permeated Peterson's office. The DNA testing facility operates with ruthless efficiency: online appointments, electronic intake forms, and a receptionist who processes me without a single unnecessary word. Isabella Clark, she confirms, scanning my driver's license. Sample collection room 3. Down the hall on your right. The collection process takes less than 5 minutes. A cheek swab, sealed in a bar-coded container, labeled with patient information that reduces me to a number. The technician, a young man with kind eyes above his mask, attempts small talk. First time doing genetic testing? I nod, watching him label the vial. Lots of people doing ancestry research these days. He offers, "This isn't about finding distant relatives," I reply. "It's about confirming the ones I already have." Back in my apartment, I spread a fresh timeline across my dining table. Dates from hospital newsletters, social registries, and medical conference proceedings create a stark pattern once arranged chronologically. I plot each point with the methodical precision I use for archive preservation projects, white cotton gloves protecting fragile newsprint as I transfer information to my growing chart. December 1986. Dr. Antoine Laurent begins surgical fellowship at Massachusetts General Hospital. January 1987. Hospital charity gala photographs show Eleanor and Antoine seated at same table. Richard absent due to emergency surgery. February 1987. 3 society page mentions of Eleanor attending events where Antoine was present. Richard appears in only one photograph. November 1987. Victoria born at Massachusetts General. December 1987. Antoine Laurent returns to Paris. Victoria had always claimed our father's focus on precision made him a brilliant surgeon but a distant parent. Now I wonder if his precision served another purpose, tracking his suspicions while maintaining the appearance of a successful marriage and family. The apartment phone rings, startling me from my concentration. Isabella. It's Margaret. Any progress with the timeline? I've established when Laurent was in Boston. The dates align precisely with Victoria's conception. My voice sounds distant, clinical, and archivist reporting findings, rather than a daughter discovering family secrets. What's your next step? Margaret asks. I need medical staff directories from the hospitals during that period. Proof they worked together, not just attended the same social functions. I can help with that. The university archive has reciprocal privileges with the medical school library. Perfect. I make a note on my growing task list. Peterson's providing the legal framework if Victoria contests the results. If? You mean when? Either way, I'll be prepared. After hanging up, I return to my timeline, adding photographs clipped from microfiche copies of hospital newsletters. In one, Eleanor laughs at something Antoine says, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Richard stands several feet away, focused on a conversation with the hospital administrator. I establish a simple network diagram connecting archivists at 3 Boston universities, Peterson's legal colleagues with estate experience, and 2 genealogists who owe me favors for research assistance. This isn't about confrontation, not yet. It's about documenting every relevant fact before anyone can challenge what the DNA results will show. My doorbell rings at 7. Margaret stands there holding a stack of folders and a bag of takeout. Thai food and hospital staff directories, she announces. I figured you hadn't eaten. We spread the folders across my living room floor, creating an evidence map that would impress the most meticulous detective. Look at this, Margaret says, pointing to a staff photo from 1990. Eleanor was on the hospital auxiliary board the same year Laurent arrived. They would have worked together on fundraising events, I confirm, adding another connection to my diagram. 3 days later, an email notification appears on my phone. Sample status update from Boston Genetic Partners. I open it, expecting confirmation that processing has begun. Instead, due to inconclusive preliminary results, we request an additional sample for verification purposes. Please contact our office to schedule a second collection appointment. My stomach tightens. I call the testing facility immediately. This is highly unusual, the technician explains. Sometimes sample contamination occurs, but what? I press. Well, sometimes when paternity is in question, we see unusual genetic markers that require additional testing. A surge of fear rises in my chest. Did Richard deliberately sabotage the test? Create false markers to prolong the humiliation even after death? I close my eyes, breath shaky. This delay gives Victoria and Eleanor time to build an alternative legal challenge, perhaps claiming emotional distress or undue influence. When I open my eyes, determination replaces fear. I schedule the second appointment for tomorrow morning. Even from the grave, he's making me prove myself. I whisper to the empty room. This time, I'll be prepared for any result. I return to my evidence wall, adding a new section for contingencies. What if both Victoria and I share Antoine as our father? What if neither of us is Richard's biological child? What if the inconclusive results are themselves evidence of something Richard discovered but never revealed? The answers won't come from emotional speculation. They'll emerge from methodical investigation documents, photographs, timelines, and finally, DNA. I need facts before feelings, evidence before confrontation. I touch the photograph of Richard accepting a medical award, his expression stern even in triumph. I'll find your truth, I promise. Whatever it island. The next day, the second DNA test goes smoother than the first. No awkward conversations with lab technicians, no explanations needed about why I'm seeking verification. Just another vial of blood drawn by a woman with efficient hands who asks nothing beyond confirming my identity. I've chosen a different company this time, more expensive, more prestigious, with a reputation for accuracy that could withstand even Victoria's legal challenges. Results typically available within 10 business days, the technician tells me, pressing a cotton ball against the small puncture in my arm. I need them faster, I say, sliding a folded check across the counter. Premium processing. Back at my condo, I spread my evidence across the dining table that has become my war room. Margaret brings coffee in the ceramic mugs we purchased during a museum conference last year. The table surface disappears beneath a timeline of fellowship announcements, hospital newsletters, and society page clippings. This is quite the dossier, Margaret says, studying the chronological arrangement. You've been thorough. Archivists are nothing if not methodical. I tap a yellowed Boston Medical Quarterly from winter 1986. Look here. Antoine Laurent's fellowship began that year and he left next year, December. The announcement mentions his specialty in cardiothoracic surgical techniques, exactly what father was known for. Margaret lifts a society page photograph showing Eleanor laughing beside a tall man with Victoria's distinctive cheekbones. The resemblance is striking. Father must have seen it too. I arrange Victoria's birth certificate beside the photo. The timeline fits perfectly. Laurent was in Boston 9 months before she was born. The doorbell interrupts our analysis. Peterson stands in the hallway, briefcase in hand, expression grim. I've prepared the legal framework for various scenarios, he says, opening his briefcase at my kitchen table. Legal documents slide out in neat folders, color-coded tabs marking different sections. Yellow if both of you are Richard's daughters, green if neither island, blue if only one of you is biologically related. You think of everything, I say. Your father taught me to prepare for all contingencies. Peterson's fingers linger on the blue folder. Isabella, you should understand the implications. If Victoria contests these results, she will, I interrupt. She's already positioning herself on social media. Poor Victoria, traumatized by Daddy's cruel will. Then we need to be ready for a prolonged fight. Peterson adjusts his glasses. The more evidence we compile now, the stronger our position. Later, after Peterson leaves, I sort everything into 3 expandable files: timeline, photographic evidence, legal documentation. No emotional narratives, just facts arranged in the methodical fashion that has defined my professional life. This isn't about hurt feelings anymore. It's about uncovering a truth that has shaped our family for decades without any of us knowing it. 4 days later, my laptop pings with a new email notification. Subject line: test results available. My finger hovers over the trackpad, suddenly hesitant. What if I'm not his daughter either? What if this destroys what little family I have left? The question paralyzes me. For all my preparation, all my evidence gathering, I haven't fully confronted the most frightening possibility that proving Victoria isn't Richard's daughter might simultaneously prove that I'm not either. That I've been building a case that will ultimately disinherit me too. Will, knowing the truth, heal or destroy me? Is this what Richard really wanted? My phone rings, startling me from my paralysis. Peterson's name appears on the screen. Victoria has requested an emergency meeting, he says without preamble. She claims to have new information regarding the will. What kind of information? She wouldn't say, but she insisted on meeting tomorrow morning. His voice lowers. Isabella, have you opened your results yet? I was just about to. I stare at the unopened email. Whatever they show, we need to be prepared before this meeting. After hanging up, I take a deep breath and click the email. The laboratory letterhead appears, followed by clinical language about methodology and controls. I scan past the technical details until I reach the conclusion section. Probability of paternity, 99.99%. Relief washes through me, momentarily weakening my knees. I am Richard Clark's biological daughter. The truth I've been seeking, the validation I'd secretly craved, appears in stark black and white on my screen. But there's a second attachment labeled Supplemental Report. I click it open, eyes widening as I read the additional information. The lab has identified something unexpected in the genetic markers they tested. I reach for my phone, texting Margaret. I need 3 folders prepared for tomorrow's meeting. Blue ones, with clear labels. Then I download the reports. My hands steady as I save the files. No trembling, no racing heart. Just the calm certainty of someone who finally holds all the evidence needed to reveal a long-hidden truth. Tomorrow at Peterson's office, the truth comes out, all of it. That night, I clicked through Victoria's Instagram for the 3rd time today, watching her calculated character assassination unfold in real time. Her latest post shows her gazing pensively at our father's gravestone, black manicure resting dramatically against the polished granite. The caption reads, "When family betrayal cuts deeper than grief. Some secrets were never meant to be uncovered. Family betrayal. Truth hurts. Healing journey." The comments section overflows with sympathetic responses from her followers. "Stay strong, V. Sending prayers during this difficult time." Victoria has curated her public image with precision, the grieving daughter now facing mysterious additional trauma. My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret. "Boston Globe Society page just called the archive asking about you. Reporter named Harriet Winters." My stomach tightens. Victoria has escalated beyond social media. The society pages our mother has cultivated relationships with for decades now represent a more dangerous battlefield. I pull up the columnists' recent articles, charity galas, museum openings, and the occasional tasteful scandal among Boston's elite. The Clark family drama would make perfect Sunday reading. The phone rings. Eleanor. "Isabella." Her voice wavers between anger and tears. "Whatever you think you know, you'll destroy this family if you reveal it." I stand at my kitchen window, watching rain streak the glass. "I'm not the one who contacted the Globe, Mother. Victoria is protecting herself. Can you blame her? You've been digging through Richard's things like some detective, making accusations." "I haven't accused anyone of anything," I say, measuring each word. "I simply took the DNA test Father required in his will." "These tests are often wrong." Eleanor's voice hardens. "Victoria spoke with Dr. Greenwald at Memorial Hospital. He says DNA testing can give false results." Of course, Victoria has medical connections. She's built her influencer empire partially on sponsored content for wellness brands and medical spas. "The results aren't wrong, Mother." A long silence stretches between us. When Eleanor speaks again, her voice has the brittle quality it gets when she's cornered. "Victoria plans to contest the will, regardless of what your test shows. Her attorney says the process could take years. Is that what you want? For all of us to be dragged through court while strangers paw through our family history?" The threat lands precisely where Victoria intended. My professional reputation depends on discretion and respect for historical records. A public legal battle would undermine everything I've built. Think about what Richard would have wanted. Eleanor continues, pressing her advantage. He valued the family name above everything. This is where she's wrong. Father valued truth above everything, even when that truth was painful. I hear his voice from a rare moment of connection during my college graduation. "History isn't what people wish happened, Isabella. It's what actually occurred, whether convenient or not." "I'll see you tomorrow at Peterson's office," I say, ending the call before Eleanor can respond. Within minutes, my phone lights up with a notification. Victoria has posted again a black and white image of herself staring soulfully into the camera, carefully crafted tear tracks visible on her cheeks. The caption reads, "When a parent's psychological abuse continues even after death, some wills are weapons. Toxic family, healing, from narcissistic abuse, my truth journey." 2. The side of my Bejer. She's reframing the narrative, casting herself as the victim of our father's psychological manipulation, rather than facing the reality of the DNA results. Her followers respond with outrage on her behalf. "No one should use a will to hurt their children. Stay strong, beautiful soul." Margaret arrives at my door with takeout Thai food and determination written across her face. "I brought reinforcements," she says, nodding toward William Peterson walking up behind her, briefcase in hand. Sorry to arrive unannounced, Peterson says, rain beating on his wool overcoat. Victoria's attorney contacted me about filing preliminary objections to the will execution. We spread documents across my dining table while Margaret unpacks the food. Peterson pulls out the legal filings. Victoria's attorney has prepared thick with procedural objections and demands for additional testing. They're claiming Richard wasn't of sound mind when he added the DNA provision. Peterson explains. They found 2 of his former colleagues willing to testify he became paranoid in his final months. That's absurd, I say. He was operating until 3 weeks before his death. Peterson nods. I know, but they're creating a paper trail to delay everything. It's a standard tactic. Margaret lays out the files we've assembled: hospital newsletters showing Eleanor and Antoine Laurent at events, society page clippings, the DNA test results. We need to present all of this formally. No more piece-by-piece revelations. Peterson reviews our evidence with professional detachment. This is extraordinarily thorough, Isabella. You've documented everything with precision. I'm an archivist, I remind him. Documentation is what I do. My phone lights up with another call from Eleanor, which I decline. Seconds later, a text appears. Victoria says she'll drop everything if you agree to split the estate 50/50. Please be reasonable. Plus. I show the message to Peterson. That's an interesting development, he says. She knows she has no legal standing. She's afraid, Margaret observes. The DNA results must have shocked her. Peterson opens his briefcase and extracts another folder. I obtained this today. The complete results from both testing companies, including the supplemental analysis. I scan the documents, pausing at a highlighted section. Subjects share maternal DNA markers only, no paternal markers in common. Victoria and I have different fathers. There's something else, Peterson says quietly. Victoria received a preliminary report 3 days ago. She's known since then. The realization hits me like a physical blow. While Victoria was posting about family betrayal and psychological abuse, she already knew the truth. She wasn't processing shock, she was conducting a preemptive public relations campaign. She's trying to control the narrative, Margaret says, echoing my thoughts. If she portrays herself as the victim of Richard's posthumous cruelty, she preserves her image even if the truth comes out. I flip through the supplemental report, absorbing the technical details that confirm what Richard apparently suspected for decades. I was his biological daughter. Victoria was not. I'll need all of this organized for tomorrow. I say, professional focus overriding emotional reaction. Everything chronological, with the most crucial evidence highlighted. Margaret squeezes my shoulder. I'll stay and help. We'll make duplicates of everything. Peterson stands to leave. Isabella, are you certain you want to proceed with the full revelation? Victoria has made it clear she'll fight this publicly. I think of Victoria's calculated Instagram posts, the society columnist preparing to feast on our family secrets, Eleanor's frantic attempts to preserve appearances. For 31 years, I've lived in the shadow of their carefully constructed reality. I'm not coming to argue. I tell Peterson, I'm coming with evidence that can't be disputed. After Peterson leaves, Margaret and I work late into the night, organizing documents, highlighting key passages, creating a timeline that traces Eleanor's relationship with Antoine Laurent alongside Victoria's birth. Every piece fits together with the neat precision of historical fact rather than family mythology. You know what bothers me most? I say as we finish the final presentation folder. It's not that Victoria isn't Richard's daughter. It's that they've known or at least suspected all along. Every time they made me feel like I didn't belong, they were projecting their own secret. Margaret pauses in her labeling. Tomorrow you reclaim your story. The real one, not the version they've been telling. I place the final document, the DNA comparison showing Victoria and I share only our mother's genetic markers, into the folder. Tomorrow, the truth my father orchestrated from beyond the grave will finally emerge, changing everything about the family narrative Victoria and Eleanor have controlled for decades. The rain continues its steady rhythm against the windows as I prepare for the confrontation that will either destroy my family or finally make it honest. The next morning, I arrive at Peterson's office 30 minutes early, carefully placing my leather portfolio on the passenger seat. The morning sun glints off the brass building numbers as I check my reflection in the car window. No trace of the sleepless night shows on my face, only calm determination in the eyes that Richard always said were too observant for my own good. Margaret meets me at the entrance, her sensible navy cardigan a stark contrast to the designer outfits Victoria and Eleanor will undoubtedly wear. "Ready?" "Ready," she asks, carrying a stack of authenticated hospital newsletters. "As ready as I'll ever be." I smooth my charcoal skirt, feeling the weight of the evidence folders in my tote bag. "Thank you for being here." Peterson's receptionist ushers us into the conference room rather than his office, a space designed for corporate negotiations rather than family matters. The long mahogany table gleams under recessed lighting, water glasses and legal pads at each place setting like formal dinner arrangements. "Miss Clark." Peterson rises, offering his hand. "I've prepared the room as requested." Victoria and Eleanor arrive together 10 minutes later, entering with the synchronized grace of performers who've rehearsed their entrance. Eleanor wears black Armani, her pearl earrings catching the light. Victoria has chosen cream linen with gold accessories, the picture of wounded innocence for her inevitable social media documentation later. Their practiced smiles falter when they notice Margaret arranging documents at the far end of the table. "I wasn't aware this would be a group meeting," Eleanor says, voice honeyed with artificial concern. Peterson gestures toward the chairs. Isabella requested additional space for documentation purposes. I wait until everyone is seated before distributing the folders, thick manila envelopes with neatly labeled tabs. My hands remain steady, my archival training evident in the precise organization of each document. "What's all this?" Victoria asks, not opening her folder. "Evidence," I say simply. "Everything properly authenticated and dated." Eleanor opens her folder first, skimming the contents with practiced nonchalance until she reaches the highlighted section of the DNA report. Her fingers freeze on the page. Victoria, watching her mother's reaction, finally opens her own folder. The color drains from her face as she reads the words "maternal match only," highlighted in yellow. "These tests are often inaccurate," Eleanor says, voice rising slightly. "We should get second opinions." "William, surely you understand the importance of verification in legal matters." I remove a second folder from my bag. I anticipated that response. This contains results from a different laboratory, same conclusion. Peterson clears his throat. "I've reviewed both reports. They appear scientifically sound and legally admissible." Victoria slams her folder shut. "This is ridiculous. Some laboratory error doesn't erase 34 years of family history." "It's not just the DNA," I say, opening my portfolio. "Margaret has helped me compile a comprehensive timeline." Margaret slides the first document across the table. A hospital staff directory from 1986 to 1987. Doctor Antoine Laurent served as visiting cardiovascular surgeon at Boston Memorial from December 1986 through December 1987. I point to the highlighted entries. Victoria was born in November 1987, exactly 9 months after the hospital gala in February. Eleanor's hand trembles slightly as she reaches for her water glass. The DNA results show that Victoria and I share maternal DNA, only different fathers. I continue, my voice steady. "I am Richard Clark's biological daughter. Victoria is not." Margaret places a yellowed hospital newsletter on the table. The front page shows Eleanor laughing beside a tall man with Victoria's distinctive chin dimple. Richard appears in the background, watching them. "The 17th of December, 1986, Margaret says. The caption identifies Dr. Laurent and Mrs. Clark as co-chairs of the holiday fundraising committee. By Victoria's carefully maintained composure finally cracks. "You've been planning this humiliation all along, just like Richard." I meet her gaze steadily. "I only sought the truth. Father did too, apparently he found it." Eleanor's perfectly manicured hands spread flat against the table surface, as if trying to anchor herself. "Richard and I were having problems," she whispers. "He was never home. The medical practice consumed him." "Mother, I know not conticate." Victoria gasps. "Antoine was kind when Richard was cold," Eleanor continues, words spilling out after decades of containment. "It was brief, just a few months before he returned to France." Peterson adjusts his glasses, clearly uncomfortable with this confession. The legal implications are quite clear. The will specifically required biological relation to Richard Clark to inherit the controlling interest and liquid assets. His legal assistant, who has been quietly taking notes, looks up with undisguised interest. The second assistant by the door fails to maintain a professional mask, her eyebrows rising at Eleanor's confession. Victoria's hands begin to shake, her social media persona crumbling under the weight of reality. This can't be happening. My entire life has been a lie. I didn't create this situation, I say quietly. I simply uncovered what was hidden. Eleanor reaches for Victoria's hand. Richard suspected but never confirmed. He loved you in his way, Victoria. Not enough to leave me his company, Victoria says bitterly. Not enough to treat me as his own after I failed to be the perfect daughter. The realization of Richard's lifelong emotional distance from Victoria, the subtle favoritism toward me that I never recognized, settles into the room like a physical presence. Peterson reviews the legal documents. According to the will's conditions, Isabella is confirmed as the sole heir to Clark Medical Technologies and the specified liquid assets. Victoria pushes away from the table, mascara tracking down her cheeks. So that's it? 35 years as Richard Clark's daughter erased by a DNA test? The victory I anticipated feels hollow as I watch my sister's world collapse, not through my actions, but through choices made before either of us was born. It doesn't have to end this way, I say, surprising myself. The will specifies what I receive, not what I do with it afterward. Peterson looks up sharply. Isabella? I'd like to establish a trust for Victoria, I continue. There's no legal obligation, but there is a moral one. We're still family, at least half-sisters by blood. Victoria stares at me, suspicion warring with desperate hope on her face. William, could you draft a modified agreement? I ask. I'll retain controlling interest in Clark Medical, but provisions should be made for both Victoria and Eleanor. Peterson nods, professional demeanor returning. I can prepare the necessary paperwork. Eleanor's perfect posture finally breaks as she slumps slightly in her chair. Why would you do this, Isabella? After everything? I gather the DNA reports, slipping them back into my folder with an archivist's care, because Richard Clark's final lesson wasn't about DNA or inheritance. It was about the difference between legal family and chosen family. I close the portfolio. I'm choosing to be better than his example. Victoria wipes her tears with trembling fingers. I don't understand you, Bella. For the first time in my life, I see my sister clearly not as the golden child or the social media star, but as someone as damaged by Richard's manipulations as I was. You don't have to understand me, I reply. Just know that some connections go deeper than DNA or legal documents. Peterson begins outlining the terms of a new agreement, as Margaret quietly collects the hospital newsletters and photographs. Evidence no longer needed, now that truth has replaced suspicion. The weight of Richard's posthumous game lifts from my shoulders. In seeking to control us from beyond the grave, he instead gave me something unexpected, the freedom to define family on my own terms. A year after the revelation, I stand in what was once my father's office at Clark Medical Technologies. 1 month after the DNA revelation turned our family inside out. The mahogany desk, smaller than Peterson's but no less imposing now, bears my papers instead of Richard's. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Boston spreads before me, autumn painting the common in fiery reds and golds. Miss Clark? My assistant knocks softly. The board members are waiting in the conference room. A year ago, those same board members barely acknowledged my existence at Foundation events. Now they seek my approval on quarterly projections. The irony isn't lost on me. Tell them 5 minutes, please. I close the folder containing Victoria's latest email, terse, but without the manipulative undertones I've learned to recognize. She left Boston 3 weeks after the revelation, her Instagram suddenly silent before resuming with carefully curated California sunsets. No family photos, no references to the Clark legacy. Just Victoria reinventing herself 3,000 miles from the truth. Eleanor sold the main house within 2 weeks, moving to a Beacon Hill condo that could fit inside the original home's grand foyer. Our weekly lunches remain awkward affairs filled with weather observations and halting attempts at deeper connection. Yesterday, she mentioned Antoine's name without flinching. Progress, perhaps. Need help sorting those? Margaret asks from the doorway, gesturing toward the banker's box of personal items I've been avoiding. What would the archivists say if they knew I was procrastinating on proper documentation? I attempt a smile. Margaret pulls up a chair. They'd say personal archives are the hardest to catalog objectively. Together we sift through the remnants of Richard's private life photographs, medical conference badges, handwritten notes in margins of journal articles. Margaret pauses, holding up a folder labeled Family Records Confidential. Isabella, look at this. Inside, medical records dating back 30 years, genetic screening. Richard underwent long before Victoria or I knew anything about DNA testing. He knew, I whisper. He confirmed it decades ago. And still kept you both close, Margaret observes. That's something, isn't it? The realization settles over me. I spent years seeking validation from a man who knew the truth all along. The words taste bitter, then oddly freeing. He could have spared us all this drama. Or maybe this was his way of forcing the truth into the open, Margaret suggests. You're an archivist. You understand better than most how buried truths eventually surface. 6 months later, I stand before the Clark Medical Technologies executive team, presenting acquisition projections with a confidence that would have been impossible before. My father's awards, which once dominated this boardroom, now hang in the medical school lobby, donated with Eleanor's blessing. I kept only one photo. Richard holding infant me, his expression unreadable but his grip protective. The company has flourished under my leadership, stock prices rising steadily. The board members who once spoke over me now lean forward when I speak. The transition wasn't seamless. 2 resigned in protest initially, but the remaining leadership recognized what Richard apparently saw. I am my father's daughter in all the ways that matter. My phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Call when you have time, no rush. Our relationship exists now in occasional emails and brief phone calls. The pretense is gone, replaced by something cautious but genuine. Last month, she asked about our childhood summer vacations, wondering aloud if her memories had been rewritten to fit a narrative. Eleanor has been unexpectedly forthcoming during our monthly dinners. She speaks of Richard's emotional absence, of Antoine's kindness during a difficult period in her marriage. He noticed me when Richard only saw his work, she explained, twisting her napkin. It wasn't just physical. He valued my thoughts when your father couldn't hear them. I established the Laurent Medical Scholarship for French exchange students last quarter, a quiet acknowledgement of complicated truths. Victoria called after the press release, her voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Thank you, she said simply, for not erasing him. 2 years after Richard's death, I stand alone at his grave, early morning mist wrapping around the granite headstone. The cemetery is silent except for distant traffic and birdsong. I place white lilies against the stone, their perfume sweet in the autumn air. You thought this would destroy us, I say quietly, but it forced us to build something real instead. The Clark Family Foundation launches next week, its mission supporting children separated from biological parents. Eleanor will serve as honorary chairperson, her idea, surprisingly. Victoria contributed to the website design remotely. Neither relationship is healed completely, but the foundation gives us neutral ground to rebuild. Family is more than biology. I practice my opening lines for the foundation launch. It's truth, even when painful. It's choosing connection when lies would be easier. A breeze stirs the cemetery trees, sending golden leaves spiraling down around me. I run my fingers over my father's engraved name, feeling neither the anger that consumed me in Peterson's office nor the vindication that followed the DNA revelation. Instead, I find something unexpected: gratitude. You gave me an unexpected gift, Father, I whisper. Freedom from pretense and the chance to build authentic connections. Walking back to my car, I realized the most valuable inheritance wasn't controlling interest in the company or the financial security that came with it. Sometimes the most precious inheritance isn't what's in the will, it's the truth that sets you free.